In 2015, 28-year-old Miranda Coleman from Portland, Oregon, set out on a solo trip through southeastern Alaska. She was an experienced hiker, held a mountain guide certification, and had already completed several demanding routes in the Cascade Mountains. She planned to spend 1 week in the Tongass National Forest, the largest forested area in the United States, stretching thousands of miles along the coast. 5 days after she began her journey, search teams started looking for her. They found nothing. For years later, a group of geologists discovered an abandoned cabin 30 miles from the official hiking trails. Inside was a body and a camera that had recorded everything. Hello, everyone. Today I am telling you a story that shows how merciless the wilderness can be and how thin the line between life and death is in places where civilization ends. If you are listening to this from the safety of your home, appreciate it, because there are places where no help will come, no matter how loudly you call. Do not forget to subscribe, and let us begin. Miranda Coleman was one of those people who could not live without mountains and forests. She worked as a graphic designer in Portland, but spent every vacation and every weekend hiking. Her social media profiles were filled with photos of mountain peaks, tents, and campfires. Her friends described her as cautious, well-prepared, and never unnecessarily reckless. In July 2015, she had saved enough money and took 2 weeks off work. She decided to fulfill a long-held dream, a hiking trip through the Tongass, one of the wildest and most beautiful places in North America. The Tongass is located in southeastern Alaska and covers an area of nearly 17 million acres, most of it untouched forest that no human has ever set foot in. On July 23rd, Miranda flew to Juneau, the capital of Alaska. She rented a room in a small hostel and spent the day preparing for her hike. She went to a local outfitter, rented a GPS tracker with an emergency distress function, and checked her gear. She carried full equipment, a tent, a sleeping bag, food supplies for 7 days, a water filter, a first aid kit, a knife, an axe, and spare clothing. The shop owner, a 60-year-old man named Jack, later told investigators that he spoke with her for almost an hour. She told him about her planned route. She intended to take the West Glacier Trail and then turn north into lesser-known areas where wildlife could be observed and absolute silence could be enjoyed. Jack warned her that the northern areas were poorly marked, that it was easy to lose the trail, and that weather conditions in the mountains could change rapidly. Miranda smiled and said that she knew this, that she was careful, and that she had both a GPS device and a locator beacon with her. Jack nodded, wished her good luck, and that was Miranda's last conversation with anyone from the city. On the morning of July 24th, she boarded a bus to the trailhead of the West Glacier Trail, about 30 miles from Juneau. The bus driver later remembered her, a young woman in hiking clothes with a large backpack, smiling and photographing the landscape through the window. She got off at the stop around 9 in the morning, waved to the driver, and walked toward the trailhead. Several hikers saw her on the trail that day. She walked confidently and at a steady pace. One of them, a couple from Canada, spoke with her around midday. Miranda told them that she planned to hike to the trail junction and then turn onto the less popular northern route. The couple warned her that very few people traveled there and that the trail was poorly marked. Miranda replied that this was exactly what she was looking for: solitude and the chance to be alone with nature. They said goodbye, and that was the last time anyone saw her. Miranda's plan was simple: 3 days heading north, then returning through the eastern areas. About 50 miles total, entirely manageable for an experienced hiker. A GPS tracker was set to transmit her coordinates to a satellite server every 6 hours, which her mother could follow through an application. The first 2 days passed normally. The signals arrived regularly and showed that Miranda was moving along her planned route. But on July 27th, the signal disappeared. Miranda's mother, Carol, waited until evening and assumed it was a technical issue. When the signal did not reappear the following day, she began calling emergency services. On July 29th, a search operation was launched. A team of 8 park rangers and volunteers set out along Miranda's planned route. They followed the trail to the junction and then continued north. The weather was good and visibility was excellent, but there was no trace of Miranda. They called her name, searched every section of the trail, and checked every clearing where she might have set up camp. Nothing. No backpack, no campfire remains, no signs of human presence, as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The search lasted a week. Helicopters and search dogs were deployed. The search area was expanded to 50 square miles. All ravines and stream beds where she could have fallen were examined. All known caves and shelters were checked. The result was always the same: nothing. Investigators focused on the last location where the GPS signal had been received. It was about 12 miles north of the trail junction, on a section of trail running along a mountain ridge overlooking the valley. The area was open and showed no obvious dangers. No one could explain why the signal disappeared at that exact spot. GPS transmitters are designed to operate for several weeks, so the battery should not have simply died. One theory suggested that Miranda might have fallen into a crevice or a vegetation-covered pit. These forests contain many such hazards: old shafts, sinkholes, and depressions hidden by moss and plants. A person can take a single step and fall dozens of feet without anything being visible from above. However, search dogs should have detected her scent or remains if she had been within the search area, and they found nothing. Another theory was a wildlife attack. The Tongass is home to grizzly bears, black bears, and wolves. Attacks on humans are extremely rare, and they usually leave evidence: blood, torn clothing, or scattered gear. In this case, there was nothing. In mid-August, the search was officially called off. The area was too vast, and there were too few leads. The case was classified as a disappearance under unknown circumstances. Miranda's family was offered condolences and informed that in such cases a person is legally presumed dead, even if the body is never found. Miranda's mother did not accept this. She traveled to Alaska 3 more times, hired private searchers, put up posters, and offered a reward for information. Nothing produced results. In 2016, the case was officially closed. Miranda Coleman was added to the list of people missing in United States national parks, a list that grows every year. Most of these cases are never solved. In the summer of 2019, for years after Miranda's disappearance, a geological expedition from the University of Alaska was working in the Tongass. They were studying rock samples in the northern part of the forest, in an area rarely visited by tourists. The expedition was led by Professor David McNeil, a specialist in glacial geology. On June 8th, a group of 4 moved about 20 miles away from the nearest hiking trail, forcing their way through dense forest along old bare paths and stream beds. They were searching for specific rock formations to collect samples. In the afternoon, one of the students, Chris, noticed a structure between the trees. It was a cabin. The cabin was small, about 10 by 13 feet, and built from logs. Part of the roof had collapsed. One wall leaned to the side, but the main structure was still standing. It stood in a small clearing, surrounded by a dense wall of spruce and cedar trees. The location was so remote that McNeil could not understand who would have built a shelter there or why. They approached carefully. The cabin door was open and hanging from one hinge. McNeil peered inside and shined his flashlight. He saw debris, broken furniture, scraps of fabric, trash on the floor, and in the back corner, against the wall, sat a figure, a human being or what was left of one. McNeil stepped back and told the students not to come closer. He contacted emergency services via satellite phone, explaining that they had found a body in an abandoned cabin and provided the coordinates. He was instructed to remain at the location and wait. A helicopter carrying park rangers arrived 3 hours later. They secured the area, recorded the coordinates, and entered the cabin. The body was indeed there, skeletal remains, partially mummified due to the cold and dry conditions. The person was sitting with their back against the wall, legs stretched out, head lowered to their chest. The body was dressed in a hiking jacket, pants, and boots. Everything was faded and covered in mold, but still recognizable. Beside the body lay a half-empty backpack. Inside were personal belongings, a wallet with identification documents, a mobile phone with a completely dead battery, a notebook, and a pen. Based on the documents, the identity was confirmed. It was Miranda Coleman, the tourist who had disappeared 4 years earlier. However, the strangest discovery was a camera. It was not Miranda's camera, which was found broken inside her backpack, but a different one. It was small and mounted to a ceiling beam inside the cabin, aimed at the center of the room. A cable ran from the camera to a solar panel installed on the roof of the cabin. The panel was old and covered with moss, but it was still functioning. This was strange, extremely strange. Why would there be a professional surveillance camera with its own autonomous power supply in an abandoned cabin 30 miles from civilization? The camera was carefully removed and taken to a laboratory. The SD card inside was intact. Some of the data had been damaged by time and moisture, but experts were able to recover several video files. They were dated from late July to November 2015. Investigators watched the footage. What they saw made even experienced officers look away. The first video was recorded on July 28, 2015, at around 8 p.m. The camera shows the inside of the cabin, bare wooden walls, a dirt floor, a broken table, and several crates in a corner. Miranda appears in the doorway. She looks exhausted and soaked, apparently having been caught in the rain. A backpack is on her shoulders. Her hair is disheveled, and her face is scratched. She steps inside, looks around, and murmurs something to herself. The camera records sound poorly, and the words are unclear, but the tone is unmistakable: relief. She has found shelter. She takes off her backpack, pulls out a sleeping bag, and spreads it on the floor. She removes something else from the pack, likely energy bars, and drinks water from a bottle. Then she notices the camera. She stands up, walks closer, and looks directly into the lens. Her face fills the frame. She frowns, clearly not understanding what it is or why it is there. She touches the cable and follows it with her eyes up to the solar panel on the roof. She shrugs and walks away. The camera continues recording for several more minutes, but Miranda simply lies down to sleep. The video cuts off. The second video is dated July 29th in the morning. Miranda wakes up and packs her belongings. She leaves the cabin but returns about 10 minutes later. Her face is tense and worried. She takes out a map, a compass, and a GPS transmitter. She looks at the device, shakes it, and clearly tries to turn it on. It does not work. She throws it on the floor in frustration. She studies the map for a long time, tracing different routes with her finger. It is clear that she is trying to determine her location. The problem is that this cabin does not appear on any map. She does not know her exact coordinates. She decides to try to retrace her steps and go back the way she came. She packs her backpack and leaves. The camera records the empty cabin for several hours. That evening, Miranda returns. She looks even more exhausted and disturbed. She sits on the floor and grips her head with both hands. Then she stands up, walks to the camera, and looks directly into the lens. Her lips move. She says something. Experts were later able to restore the audio and read her lips. "I am lost. I cannot find the trail. Everything looks the same." The third video is dated July 30th. Miranda spends the entire day in the cabin. She studies the map and writes notes in her notebook. At some point, she goes outside and returns about an hour later carrying branches and brush. She tries to start a fire inside the cabin in a makeshift fire pit made of stones. The fire burns poorly, and smoke fills the cabin. She coughs and puts the fire out. She decides not to risk making a fire indoors. She eats from her supplies. It is clear that she does not have much food left: canned goods, dried fruit, and nuts. She drinks water. Then she goes back to the camera and looks into it for a long time. She says, "If anyone sees this, my name is Miranda Coleman from Portland. I am lost in the Tongass. I found this cabin by accident. I do not know where I am. The GPS is not working. I am trying to find my way back, but all the trees look the same. I keep going in circles." The fourth video, dated July 31st. Miranda looks worse. Her face is sunken, and her movements are slow. She takes inventory of her food supplies. She lays everything out on the floor and counts it. It is clear that there is not much left, perhaps enough for 5 days if she rations carefully. She writes something in her notebook, likely calculations of how long she can survive. She leaves the cabin in the morning and returns in the evening. Once again, she has not found the trail. She sits down on the floor and begins to cry. The camera records this without emotion. A woman in the corner of the cabin, hugging her knees and rocking back and forth. The fifth video, August 2nd. Miranda decides to stay in the cabin and not waste her strength wandering aimlessly. She rations her food. It is clear that the portions are very small, tiny meals once a day. She drinks water from a stream that flows about 100 meters from the cabin. She leaves with an empty bottle and returns with a full one. She spends most of the day lying in her sleeping bag, conserving energy. Sometimes she approaches the camera and speaks to it as if it were a friend. She talks about her life, her family, and what she planned to do after this hike. Her voice is weak and unsteady. She is clearly aware that her chances of getting out of here are becoming smaller and smaller. The sixth video, August 5th. Miranda barely moves. She lies on the floor, covered with a sleeping bag. There is almost no food left. The camera shows her eating the last energy bar, slowly, in small pieces, trying to make it last the entire day. She drinks water and nothing else. She speaks to the camera. The third day with almost no food. "I am very weak. I tried to scream for help. I screamed for an hour. No one answered, only the echo in the forest. The seventh video, August 8th. Miranda is barely visible. She lies motionless in a corner. Only occasionally does she move, shifting her position. She does not approach the camera. She does not leave the cabin. She simply lies there. The eighth video, August 12th. The camera records the empty cabin for several hours. Then Miranda appears in the frame. She crawls from the corner toward the door, slowly, stopping to rest. She crawls to the threshold and looks outside. Sunlight falls on her face. She lies there for about an hour, then crawls back inside. Her strength is fading. The ninth video, August 17th. Miranda is lying with her back against the wall. She does not move. The camera records her for several hours. Only her chest rises and falls slowly. She is still breathing. The 10th video, August 21st. Miranda is in the same position. At some point, she opens her eyes and turns her head toward the camera. She looks directly into the lens for a long time. Her lips move. Experts later reconstructed the words. "Mom, forgive me. I tried. I held on. I did not give up." The final video, dated November 3rd. The camera records the cabin. Inside, it is dark. Only faint light enters through the cracks in the walls. A figure is sitting against the wall, completely motionless. Miranda Coleman is dead. The examination of the body determined that death was caused by exhaustion and dehydration, compounded by hypothermia. Based on the condition of the remains, the approximate time of death was established as late August to early September 2015. This means that Miranda survived in this cabin for about a month after she became lost. Her notebook was also found. The first pages contain a route plan, notes about landscapes, and sketches of plants. Then the entries change. Day 3. I cannot find the trail. All directions look the same. The GPS is broken. It fell on the rocks. The screen is shattered and will not turn on. I have food for 5, maybe 6 days. I must ration carefully. Day 5. I am walking in circles. Yesterday, I found a stream. Today, I found the same stream again. Or is it a different one? I do not know. I decided to stay in the cabin and wait. Maybe someone is looking for me. My mother has surely raised the alarm. Day 7. There is very little food left. Very little. I tried eating berries from bushes near the cabin. I vomited all night. They are probably poisonous. I will not do that again. Day 10. Hunger. Constant, painful hunger. I drink a lot of water to fill my stomach. It only helps for a short time. Day 12. Today I screamed. I screamed names, screamed for help, screamed just to scream. My throat hurts. No one came. Day 15. Weakness. It is hard to stand up. I crawl to the stream and crawl back. There is absolutely nothing to eat, only water. Day 18. I do not know what day it is anymore. I stopped counting. Time is blurring. I sleep, wake up, and fall asleep again. I dream about home. Mom is making breakfast. I am eating. Then I wake up and there is nothing to eat. Day. Mom, if you are reading this, I love you. I did not give up. I fought until the end. I am sorry that it turned out this way. The final entry was almost unreadable. The handwriting was shaky. The letters ran into one another. It is cold. Very cold. I want to go home. The investigators tried to answer the most important question. How did Miranda get so far off the trail? Based on the last GPS points, her approximate route was reconstructed. She had been hiking along the northern trail as planned, but at some point she turned off. Perhaps she noticed something interesting, a deer, a beautiful view, an unusual tree. Perhaps she simply took the wrong turn at a fork in the path. In the forests of Tongass, it is easy to get lost. The trails are poorly marked. Many sections look exactly the same. Endless spruce trees, moss, deadwood. There are no landmarks. Visibility is often no more than 50 meters. Even an experienced hiker can walk in circles and return to the same spot without realizing it. Miranda most likely left the trail on July 27th. She tried to get back, but could not find it. She wandered for a day, maybe 2. Then she found a cabin. By chance, she stumbled upon it in the forest. She decided that this was an opportunity, shelter, a place where she could wait, collect her thoughts, and make a plan. But she underestimated the situation. The cabin was located 30 miles from the nearest trail, in an area that almost no one ever visited. Search teams looked for her within a 50-mile radius of the last GPS point, but they never reached this location. It was too far, too difficult to access. Miranda waited for rescue, but it never came. After a week, her supplies ran out. She tried to survive on water and berries, but it was not enough. Her body began to fail, her strength faded. By mid-August, she could no longer walk and could only crawl. By the end of August, Even that was no longer possible. She died alone in an abandoned cabin, surrounded by endless forest. The only witness to her final days was a camera mounted on the ceiling. The second major question for investigators was, where did the camera come from? Who installed it and why? The cabin was thoroughly examined. Based on the type of logs, nails, and construction methods, it had been built sometime in the 1990s. It was likely a hunting shelter or a temporary hideout for poachers. During those years, there was significant illegal hunting of bears and deer in Tongass. Poachers built cabins like this in remote areas and used them as bases. The camera, however, was much newer, a model from the 2000s. It was an industrial-grade surveillance camera, typically used to monitor warehouses or construction sites. It was connected to a solar panel, also not a consumer device, but professional equipment designed for long-term autonomous operation. Someone had deliberately installed this system. But why would anyone monitor an empty cabin in the middle of the forest? Several theories were considered. The first theory was that it was a trap or observation post for illegal hunters. Perhaps someone was poaching bears and installed the camera to monitor bait or traps. An old bear trap was indeed found near the cabin, a metal device with jaws, banned in the United States since the 1990s. However, the trap was rusted, non-functional, and had clearly not been used for decades. The second theory was that the cabin served as a hideout for monitoring illegal activity. Perhaps marijuana was grown nearby, contraband was stored there, or the location was used as a transfer point. The camera would have been used for security to detect intruders. However, no evidence of such activity was found. The third theory was that the camera had been installed by a local resident or a ranger to observe wildlife. Cameras are sometimes placed in remote locations to study animal behavior. But all official monitoring programs were checked, and none had cameras installed in that area. Investigators attempted to trace the camera using its serial number. The model was old. The manufacturer no longer existed. Sales records had been lost. It was a dead end. The conclusion was this: the camera had been installed by an unknown person for unknown purposes at an undetermined time between 2000 and 2015. And by tragic coincidence, it had recorded the final days of Miranda Coleman. Miranda's remains were returned to her family. She was laid to rest in Portland in September 2019. More than 200 people attended the funeral: friends, colleagues, and people who had followed her story for all 4 years. Miranda's mother, Carol, gave an interview to local media. She said that despite her pain, she was grateful to finally know something about her daughter's fate, and that 4 years of uncertainty had been worse than knowing the truth. The footage from the camera was horrifying, she said, but it showed her that Miranda was strong, that she fought, and that she did not give up until the very end. The video recordings themselves were not released. At the family's request, they remained in police archives, but transcripts of what Miranda said to the camera reached the media. People read her final words, and many of them cried. Miranda's story became a warning to everyone who sets out alone into the wilderness. Her case is now discussed in survival courses and cited as an example of what can go wrong, even when a person is experienced and well-prepared. Miranda's main mistake was that she kept moving after she left the trail. The most important survival rule is this: if you are lost, stay where you are, especially if people will definitely be searching for you. Search teams begin at the last known point and expand outward. When you keep moving, you leave the search area. Miranda panicked. That is understandable. Alone in the forest, with a broken GPS and no sense of direction, she tried to find her way back on her own, wandered in circles, and moved farther and farther away. When she found the cabin, she was already too far from the area where rescuers were searching. Her second mistake was underestimating the seriousness of the situation. She had food for a week and believed that within that time she would either find a way out or be rescued. But when it became clear that neither would happen, it was already too late. Her strength was gone, and she could no longer move. Her third mistake was not lighting a signal fire. Smoke from a large fire can be seen for many miles, especially in the mountains. She tried to make a fire inside the cabin to keep warm, but that was dangerous. She should have built a large fire outside, using green branches to create thick smoke. Someone might have seen it, but she did not do so, perhaps out of fear of starting a forest fire, or simply because she no longer had the strength. The case was officially closed in 2020. Cause of death: exhaustion and hypothermia due to disorientation in the wilderness. No criminal activity, no violence. A tragic accident. The cabin where Miranda died was added to official maps. The National Park Service placed a warning sign there, stating that the location was dangerous and that visitors should exercise caution. The camera was removed, the solar panel dismantled, but the cabin itself was left standing. Dismantling a structure 30 miles from civilization was too costly and impractical. Today, some tourists who know the story deliberately visit the cabin. They leave flowers, notes, and photographs of Miranda. The place has become a kind of memorial, a reminder of how fragile life is and how powerful nature can be. In 2021, Miranda's mother Carol founded a fund dedicated to tourist safety. The fund finances survival skills programs, distributes free GPS beacons to travelers in need, and organizes seminars on wilderness safety. The logo of the fund is a photograph of Miranda on a mountain summit, smiling and happy. Beneath the photo are the words, "Do not forget to come home." The story of Miranda Coleman reminds us that nature does not forgive mistakes, that even in the 21st century, with GPS devices, satellite phones, helicopters, and search teams, a person can still disappear without a trace. A few wrong steps, a single bad decision, can be fatal. But it is also a story about strength of spirit, about a woman who endured for a month under conditions that would have broken many people within a week. She kept records so that those who found her would know what had happened. She spoke to the camera and left a final message for her family. She did not give up until the end. Today, the camera that recorded her final days is kept at the Alaska History Museum. Beside it are Miranda's notebook and a photograph of her marked route. Visitors stand silently before the exhibit, read her last words, and look at her smiling face in the photograph. And everyone who sees it understands. Tongass, like any wilderness, is both beautiful and dangerous. It can give you unforgettable experiences, and it can take your life. Respect it, prepare for it, and above all, remember that nature does not care about you. Only you can take care of yourself.